Like dead men shall live, together with my dead body shall they arise, awake and sing. Here dwell in the dust, for thy dew is as the dew of earth, and the earth shall cast out the rough iron. Come, my people, enter into thy chambers and shut the doors about me. I myself, as it were, for a little moment, till the indignation be overpast. For behold, Yahweh cometh out of his place to punish the inhabitants of the earth for their iniquity. The earth also shall disclose her blood.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to Line by Line Bible Studies. Continuing today in the book of Proverbs. Since I would say Proverbs, we're not going to have a long talk here, but Proverbs are mostly axiomatic, and they stand on their own, meaning you don't really have to take them in context. The context is the Proverbs of Solomon. So in the interest of time, and that we have read this chapter twice already, we're just going to read from where we're starting. So we're going to read at verse 13. Because like I said, the context here, we could try to read something into the order of them, but it's going to prove very difficult, right? That would be another layer of understanding that I think would not necessarily be profitable. All right, let's begin. In the lips of him that hath understanding, wisdom is found. But a rod is for the back of him that is void of understanding. Wise men lay up knowledge, but the mouth of the foolish is near destruction. The rich man's wealth is his strong city. The destruction of the poor is their poverty. The labor of the righteous tendeth to life, and the fruit of the wicked to sin. He is in the way of life that keepeth instruction, but he that refuseth reproof erreth. He that hideth hatred with lying lips, and he that uttereth slander is a fool. In the multitude of words there wanteth not sin, but he that refraineth his lips is wise. The tongue of the just is as choice silver, the heart of the wicked is little worth. The lips of the righteous feed many, but fools die for want of wisdom. The blessing of the Lord, it maketh rich, and he addeth no sorrow with it. It is as sport to a fool to do mischief, but a man of understanding hath wisdom. The fear of the wicked, it shall come upon him, but the desire of the righteous shall be granted. I need a sip of water. I'm not going to make you listen to drinking sounds. What's going on? I just had trouble breathing with the layer of phlegm present. It's just an airflow issue. Made it a bit of a struggle. All right. Let's just read verse 24. The fear of the wicked, it shall come upon him, but the desire of the righteous shall be granted. As the whirlwind passeth, so the wicked is no more. So is the wicked no more. But the righteous is an everlasting foundation. As vinegar to the teeth, and as smoke to the eyes, so is the sluggard to them that send him. The fear of the Lord prolongeth days, but the years of the wicked shall be shortened. The hope of the righteous shall be gladness, but the expectation of the wicked shall perish. The way of the Lord is strength to the upright, but destruction shall be to the workers of iniquity. The righteous shall never be removed, but the wicked shall not inhabit the earth. The mouth of the just bringeth forth wisdom, but the froward tongue shall be cut out. The lips of the righteous know what is acceptable, but the mouth of the wicked speaketh frowardness. I was thinking the other day I was going to mention, I forgot a couple studies in a row. I don't know if any of you remember, if you're as old as me, you'd have to be, I think, as old as me to remember it the way I remember it. Because I saw them in later years and they'd much watered it down. But there used to be a magazine for kids called Highlights. And I know they probably still make it, but it's not what it used to be. But they had this section of Goofus and Gallant, and it used to be drawn really detailed. These funny drawings, and Goofus was, of course, always, he was the fool in the proverb. And I swear half of them were like this. It was mostly about, Gallant. Gallant's always like, he's there early on the harvest. He's harvesting in summer. But Goofus, he's goofing around. He's off playing, and there were no video games. He was literally just, what would he do? He'd be like kicking a can in a vacant lot, like we used to do when I was a kid. And when I was a kid, when I got bored, I would play with sticks and air conditioner fans as they blew, I think kids still do that. Because even with all the sophisticated garbage we throw at them, or don't throw all the sophisticated garbage at them, please. Okay. Because it's not, children need to handle things that aren't smooth and sensitive to the touch sometimes. Okay. We're on verse 4. That was last time. 13. In the lips of him that hath understanding, wisdom is found, but a rod is for the back of him that is void of understanding. And these are sayings, like I said, axiomatic and true. It doesn't matter how you feel about it. Some people, I don't like that. That's what happens. It's understanding. In the lips of him that hath understanding, wisdom is found. When you have understanding, because understanding is beyond knowledge, in my opinion. It's a different type of thing. It says, get the knowledge, and with all that get understanding, or something like that. Sorry, I'm not so good at quoting. The thing is, the quotes are always funny because we're quoting English, and of course it was written in Hebrew. So all our quotes are subject to the translator's whims. But the word understanding here. Verse 12, I'm just looking it up here on Bible Hub. Verse 13. Discernment. Because, the word knowledge. Oh, the next verse has knowledge in it, right? Wise men lay up knowledge. I'm going to bring these up in just a second. That's good enough. We don't have to, as long as I don't cough right in the microphone, right? Right. That's good enough. Nobody minds hearing a cough now and then. All right. So here we have it. Being the word for discernment. It's a primitive root, not a prime. R.L. Murray. When I see PRM period, I still say prime because of his little error. Not being a real scholar, he didn't understand that. You could have looked at you don't have to be a scholar to look at the front of Strong's Concordance to understand that what that abbreviation stands for. Primitive. You wouldn't abbreviate prime. Here it is, primitive here. Primitive is subjective also. But anyways, what they mean is a basic root. To separate mentally or distinguish. That is generally to understand. You can have all kinds of knowledge. Knowledge is da'ath, knowledge. From yada. I was about to say from Yoda, because Yoda gives knowledge. I'm just kidding. All right. Cunning. No. From yada, knowledge, whatever, cunning. It can imply things like having knowledge can imply things, so it can be used in the sense of cunning. Okay, fine. But the idea of discernment, because you can know all kinds of facts. There's, in fact, I like something Jordan Peterson said. I don't want to say I made this up, but there's a nearly infinite number of facts. Of course, there's pretty much infinite. Facts are just all kinds. There's infinite facts about you. About nature, about the world, just so many. How do you prioritize them? How do you know what are the most important facts? And that's an important question. And we do this. And what it is by the power of discernment. To be able to understand this is more important than that. That this is more holy than that. This is holy and this is profane. To be able to distinguish the two. Some people, when you can't distinguish between the holy and the profane, I mean, it's critical. You gotta be able to know the difference. We all have to get our feet dirty. Even Jesus had his feet. Jesus washed their feet and said his feet were washed too. He allowed it. Sorry. It is, being in the world, we come into contact with things that are dirty, so to speak. What was about that? Feet in the dirty and all that. I didn't really connect it very well. Anyways, but the point is, if we need to discern, and wisdom is using that discernment. He that has discernment, wisdom comes out, because sometimes wisdom isn't pre-programmed. You don't necessarily have a proverb for everything that ever happens in life. Okay, I certainly haven't had a that's why there are things I'll say and things you hear from me about my experience as a father. It's not written in the Bible. But it may be something that I used principles that I find in the Bible and applied them using the power of the Holy Spirit, which to me is actually the preeminent thing. The Holy Spirit is the preeminent above, above anything else that, because my understanding of the Word is based on my discernment. Whether I'm discerning, I'm sorry, I have a little piece of pepper came out. I had breakfast really quick before this. And discernment, yeah. If you have it, if you're able to distinguish things and understand intuitively a bit, what happens is, as you become imbued with knowledge of the Word, having that knowledge in you is good. That's one of the reasons I wrote scripture songs, because though I didn't understand everything I was singing, I thought, well, if I repeat it, like that song, Wonderful Words of Life, sing them over again to me, Wonderful Words of Life. I remember singing that with people and thinking, I like that song. I like the sentiment. I need to hear that again. There are many places in the Bible I was like, I want to hear that again. So I'd write a song about it, so I could listen to it again and again. And I found that by listening to scriptures again and again, even though I don't know, I don't have a detailed knowledge of every part of the scripture, but I have really intimate knowledge of many things that God has said. And so that forms a very strong base of just knowledge that's in me. And then now discernment can use that base of knowledge as a reflection point on what God's will is. What God wants me to do. The Holy Spirit being the guiding force. And he's preeminent because I can't understand that or make sense of that without him. I know this because I used to not understand. And then when I get the Holy Spirit, I noticed I was understanding things better and differently. And that's not to say that it's always perfect. Meaning that ever since then I've been perfect. I never claimed that, but I said it changed, and that change, if your mind is radically altered, it's possible there can be overcorrection too. I don't know. I don't consider an overcorrection so much as I'm correcting everything, missing areas that didn't get corrected. Scrubbing with a big brush, so to speak, a big messy head full of bad ideas. You scrub that all away. There's gonna be cracks and crevices where some large, some small, where maybe bad ideas take hold or still hold on. I could see how some people would think that about me. Like, for example, there are people who I have a lot of agreement, right? On things like, let's say, the Trinity or whatever. But then they'd say, well, you're a futurist. I don't believe in that. I believe in what would they'd be preterist or whatever. Or is that the same thing? They're the ones who believe it's all happened already, or it's all happening or whatever. But we put these things into our heads. We study the scripture. We read them several times. We read these Proverbs already several times. Do you remember every single one of them? I don't. But the principle, I'll never forget this. I don't need the form of words either. I can make up a proverb I could just plug and play all of these. You can. Just like it already demonstrated that, right? Don't you think it kind of demonstrated the plug and play ability of some of these things? You can always just say, hey, put your trust in the Lord, and you will never fall, but a prating fool shall fall. I mean, it's true. It's not, it's not on the level of, again, but what I'm saying is the wisdom, you can carry that with you. You understand that the prating fool is going to fall, but wisdom is a way of life. A way not of life of like, well, it is a way of life, but it's also a way to live forever. True wisdom will guide you to life eternal because first it is the fear of the Lord. And the fear of the Lord, you know what it says in the New Testament? That them that fear God and love righteousness, the gospel ends up getting preached to those people. Cornelius, the Lord has a way of finding out people like that. He doesn't just let them sleepwalk into hell or anything. Don't worry about it. I mean, do your job. As a Christian, preach the word. The rod is for the back of him that is void. If we don't have discernment, it doesn't matter. You can know a lot of things. Every thief understands that it's illegal. If they get caught, they're going to go to jail, right? They know that exists, that fact exists, but they don't discern that that's going to actually happen to them. If I do this, I discerned a long time ago with certain behaviors on my part, but I can't keep doing that. I know I can't keep doing that. There's some things you just can't keep up. That kind of sin is death. And you can't keep doing it. And it's killing you. It will kill you. You knew from the beginning. And so it's like throwing yourself off the temple. You can't do it. Or you'll die. It doesn't mean you're not going to be saved necessarily, but it's like you're going to have the consequences. We're all going to die, but I don't want to die foolishly. I don't want to have the rod on my back as though my death. It's like, well, I should have listened. They told me. My teachers told me. Everyone told me. That hurts. That's going to kill you. That's going to do this. You need to do this. You should have do that. Don't do that. And if you're void of understanding, wisdom, don't do that. Whatever it happens to be. You're going to get the rod. Doesn't matter. And that's true whether you're a believer or not, because whom he loves, he chasteneth. It's more true of you. When God lets the wicked go unchastened, it's because he hates them. And he wants them to fill up their wickedness. He hardened Pharaoh's heart so that it would be really bad because he hated him. I know people don't like that idea that God hates, but it's like he hates. He hates. Jacob have I loved, but Esau have I hated. And people say, oh, okay, whatever. It's what it says. Maybe there's something I misunderstood. But I know this. Then, like I said, it's not a question of fear of salvation. I don't like getting corrected. I don't want all things work together for good for those that love God. For me to have to use that to explain how all the misery of my life is all for my good and I should rejoice. It's like I like what it says later on. Like what it says here about the Lord's, the blessing of the Lord. It makes rich and addeth no sorrow to it. And I can say that the riches of the Lord are like that. The ways in which the Lord has made me rich, there's no sorrow in it. My only sorrow, I don't know. Whatever. My only sorrow, when I say, it truly does make me sad. But if I say it, it's like humble bragging. So I'm just going to shut up about it. Forget it. Whatever. Sometimes it makes your belly bitter. Let's just put it that way a little bit. I don't know. There's like like I said, there's a bittersweetness. Is there a downside? A little bit. There's not. It's not to say it's not overall all good. But in this world, you have sorrow. And Jesus Christ himself was a man of sorrow and acquainted with grief. So if you don't understand the reality of the feelings of this life, I don't know. Then perhaps you have. Not everyone does. I find interest. I do find people who are like psychopaths interesting because they don't have the same. They have a much. To me, it's almost like they have this magical control over their feelings, but actually, their feelings just don't well up within them. That must be interesting. It's like, because to me, it's like also I know in that I there's something very powerful about that. I understand why people think the experiences with the Lord are almost like feelings driven, because you can have such strong feelings. It feels almost like some sort of weird power overcomes you. I know. But that's how because I've been subject to feelings all my life. That's why I know when the Lord's power came on me, it was nothing like feelings. It felt like something, but it was nothing like feelings. like oh, ecstasy. It was nothing like that. Anyways. Okay, so wise men lay up knowledge, but the mouth of the foolish is near destruction. Of course, wise men lay up knowledge. Some of these, there's like an obvious half, and then maybe there's another not so obvious half. Wise men lay up knowledge, but the mouth of the foolish is near destruction. It's like on one hand, we have laying up, putting away, but a lot of times it's like, it's the wicked, it's their mouth. Their mouth, their mouth, their mouth, their mouth. It's so interesting, right? As Jesus said, there's nothing that goes into a man that defiles him, but the things that come out of him. And even the things of your mouth. He said, men will give account for every idle word. You remember in the very first proverb when it talked about fearing the Lord, and it was in context of, what they were saying to each other. Let's go kill someone. The words of their lips they are snared by. They think the things they speak in secret aren't known. But God is very privy to the thought, to the things that the thoughts of their mind, that they don't keep them cooped up there. That's the thing about the wicked. They can't keep it there. I have many evil thoughts I've put away from me. Kept them in my mind, never given them my lips, because some things shouldn't be spoken. And evil, I mean, I don't, whatever, but Paul even said so, right? It said, somewhat. He said, like, even it was a shame to even speak of such things, even among the Gentiles or something like that. Anyways, but there are things that are so shameful that it's like you don't even like to speak of them. There are topics, which especially with salacious things. And they're in the Bible, though. There's affairs and adulteries and stuff like that, but not the gory detail of all. It's like that on that level too. But the foolish, their mouths are just a fountain of perversity, of course. When they have some perverted thought, they have to go out and share it with people. I'm always kind of, they have to go and they have to go let other people know what they like to do. I remember I was astonished by this because I was always ashamed of my perversity in whatever degree it was. And I realized, in the grand scheme of things, having acquainted myself with the perverse, that I was on the very tame end of everything, but still, you find that, like I said, I found this person I knew from his childhood. He became an adult, and he was into S&M. And he wanted to share it with people, his family and friends. He wanted them to know how this is his, like it was an identity to him, which was just blew my mind. Like he wanted people to know, and I think he wanted them to approve or what. I don't know what. It's a weird thing. He wanted approval. He wanted people to know that this was his. It's just such a weird thing. I like to bring people into my dungeon. Any ladies that would like to come down to my dungeon any old time? I mean, what a weird thing. And so, I mean, once you're just giving your lips to speak the evil that your heart has conceived, I mean, that's already, you're acting on it. It's like, that's the first. I think that's why the lips are so important, because it's the first step in sin. It's always, yes, in the heart it happens, but until you let it out of there, until you do something about the temptation you're wrestling with, and it can be accept that idea and nurture it, and that's going to lead to sin in one way or the other. And in itself, entertaining, I think, wicked ideas like fantasies and stuff like that, entertaining and giving into those things, it's always the road to sin, and itself is a sin, of course, lusting in your heart. But there is a point at which you're just being tempted and you haven't sinned. And with sexual temptation, it's one thing. A lot of times, the line is very quick to cross because as human beings, we easily fall prey to temptation. You have to actually guard against certain kinds of temptations. You have to guard yourself because you know it's out there and you know you're vulnerable. So you keep yourself. You watch over yourself. It's not for salvation. It's because I don't like the rod on my back, okay? And the Lord, I know. I know I'm one of God's elect. And that doesn't mean I'm a special Christian. That just means I'm a Christian, a saint, just all those, like the rest of us, just the rest of you, us all. But how do I know that God has chosen me to salvation? Because of all the chastisement. He doesn't suffer my foot to go astray very much, in so many ways. And it's been that way with me for 30 years. He's been like, psh, 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 psh. He's got one rod on the right hand and one on the left. And if I go, not that he doesn't, that's an exaggeration because he's very kind to me. He also very blesses me, and blessings gives riches that do not add sorrow. It's all true. I can attest, having lived so long now, I couldn't have taught this very well as a 20 or a 30 or maybe a 40-year-old. But now, I am a 40-year-old. I'm 49. But I'll be 50 this year. I already think of myself as older. Because I've been like, okay, I'm ready to be 50. Just like my wife and I, we're ready to have our 30th anniversary. I'm sick of this 28, 29. Come on, let's just get to 30. So we can say we've been married 30 years. The rich man's wealth is, the mouth of the foolish is near destruction. Now, the things coming out of his mouth, man, you hear it, and it's like, these are all the things that lead to destruction. It means sin. A mouth full of sin, because that sin tends to destruction. In fact, the fruit of the wicked is sin. Destruction is just putting the end product for the means. The mouth of the foolish is near destruction. Why? Because it's full of sin and wickedness. And not of, and it's knowledge of the perverse. That also. Because, that's another thing. Is like, I remember when I went to school as a kid, the little kids couldn't wait to tell you. Couldn't wait to share you the rhymes. One of the first rhymes I learned in school from my fellow classmates was, I love you, you love me, homosexuality. People think that we are friends, but we're really lesbian. That's what we learned, not with the teacher, but the children. And I remember kids going around making these obscene gestures with they make a little hole with one hand, stick their finger out, and they'd imitate penetration. And say, do you understand what that is? They couldn't wait to share that with me. I mean, and not that they're especially wicked, but it shows the wicked nature of man. They love to share their perverse little secrets. Hey, Paul, you want to come with us and look for Playboys? But don't tell your mom. She'll kill you. Little did I know my mother had a stack of Playboys. She wasn't going to kill me. She was going to say, here, boy, have at it. Wouldn't want you to be gay. I think that's part of it. Wouldn't want you to turn out gay. Anyways, I feel like that's, I don't know. I've never asked for an explanation. I don't want one. The rich man's wealth is his strong city. The destruction of the poor is their poverty. I like the sentiment here as far as like, it's just an observation. It's not saying, like Jesus said, the poor you have always with you. How do you fix this? The wealth man, the rich man's wealth is his strong city. Meaning, let's look at it two ways, right? Just because that's the easiest way to do it. On one hand, you could think of the strong city because the rich man is important to the strong. I'm taking it the hard way first, by the way. The rich man is important to the strong city. I'm thinking of this from political influence type of an angle. You know what I mean? But of course, the obvious thing is you could say, well, wealth is like a strong city. It's a metaphor, right? His strong city is his wealth. It keeps him and protects him. It's like he has all kinds of ways against all the vicissitudes of life. He has many backstops, right? No kid. I mean, against the natural things of like the things a strong city can do for you, wealth can also do for you. But also, being attached to a strong city is a rich thing to have. I don't think that's what it means. That interpretation, I don't know why I insist on going there first, because I don't really think that's what's meant. I think it's a simple metaphor. But the destruction of the poor is their poverty. So the thing that brings them down is the fact that they don't have enough. I mean, it's a simple observation. It's not saying it's, but what do you do with it? That's I remember that's something people to this day talk about, like Jordan Peterson. He's like, that's a terrible problem. You gotta only 10% of the trees take 99% of everything, or whatever. The four with the rules of bell curves and stuff, right? The tallest trees blot out the light for all the smaller ones, and everyone's like, hey, how do we keep billionaires from becoming trillionaires, and then everyone else from becoming serfs? Because at some point, like, I used to wonder, well, who cares about disparity? We're all richer, aren't we? Aren't we all richer? Then I mean, like, none of my ancestors had a pocket computer that's cooler, not cooler, but more functional than anything they had in Star Trek. The Star Trek, man, I got one of those. It's like, I don't even have it. It's out in the garage in a bucket. My flip phone. That's how outdated my flip phone is. My sister used to laugh at me. She's like, what's that? I mean, I don't mean to mock her, but it was funny. I get her joke. And she meant it as a joke. But because it's so outdated, it's 2023. Why are you walking around with a little flip phone? Beep, bop, bop. Because I like phones. You know why? Because though this is an amazing pocket computer, it's a terrible phone. I hate it as a phone. It's as a telephone, it's terrible. Almost whatever. It's not good. Just as like, as far as form, elegance, for a phone, no. Well, you go hands free. That's fine. So I don't know what else to say about this. Here's the thing. Here's what is the self? Okay, well, what can save the poor from poverty? But happy are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. The Lord Jesus. Like I said, I have lived most of my married years, or the past 25 years, I've been raising kids with my wife. I think we were technically living in poverty every year except one or two early, when we only had a couple kids. And I had some of the best earning years of my life right before we got the house. In fact, the 2 years before we got the house were my best earning years ever, and I never earned as much money again. It's like I peaked back in 00 or something like that, or 99. I forgot what year. Maybe it was 99 or 98, right around there I peaked income-wise. I was working 2 jobs at the time. I continued to work 2 jobs, but never 2 that paid as well. And whenever I could work just one, I did work just one, in order to prefer being myself near home to be part of raising my children, which that treasure for me is far greater, because they were raised by their parents, by both their parents, and were influenced by their father, which is good. Even though I certainly don't think of myself as, I think I have many deficits as a father. But in some ways I'm outstanding. I won't deny that. But I have ups and downs. Everyone does. Save the Lord. But poverty doesn't prevent you from having the blessings of God, because the blessings of God don't have anything to do with wealth. And though, you can still hurt because of your lack of money, but the peace of mind that comes from knowing that you're doing what pleases God, and that you're not suffering for any sin or anything like that peace of mind is precious. It is to me, because like that, to know that there's someone who cares about my plight. And here's the thing, like I was saying, I've lived in all those years in poverty, and very often from month to month, and very often not from month to month. Meaning, I'd live sometimes from July to October. Meaning there'd be like 3 months where there'd be like I get some money and then there'd be nothing for like 3 months. And I'd scrape by on almost nothing. You know what I mean? And making it month to month, sometimes falling behind, often falling behind, because I sacrificed many things, but there's things I didn't want to sacrifice, like for the kids, for their health, for whatever, we would do things. We had other expenditures that got me in trouble at times, but it wasn't for selfish reasons, usually. Well, the thing is, like I said, if you want to drive new cars around all the time, it's like you better have a high-powered, I don't know. It's hard. Here's the thing. It's hard to make a lot of money and have a lot of time. It's hard to do both unless you're just a real genius, and you worked it right from the beginning. It's hard to get there. It's not easy. But I like I said, I took the hard way. But this proverb did not overtake me because I'm not really poor. You know what I mean? I'm actually rich. Because he that is rich in the Lord is not poor. And this, if you don't have the Lord and you're poor, that's a rough spot to be, man. Yeah. How horrible that is. How lonely and great is that destruction. That's, that. And then you look at the rich man in his city. You say, how is it possible that God is just? Well, here's the thing. A man that's, like I said, I'm technically in poverty only because I sacrificed getting ahead and getting a lot of material gains to just make sure we had food and clothing and to make sure my wife was able to homeschool and I was able to help homeschool, home educate, as I like to say, because I don't really like the idea of schooling, especially small children. Schooling is for fish, as I say. Not for small children. I just don't think it does them good. I think that's why they have all kinds of social problems. It's because from a young age, they're just put in a room with one adult and 30 other kids their exact age. No other mature examples. No other moderating forces. Just a bunch of the same 5-year-old mental states just colliding with each other like a bunch of twins or something. It's just really weird dynamic. And we've only done that for like 100 years, and I don't understand why we assume it's just fine. It was put in place by the people that started that Prussia? One of the most militaristic nations, trying to turn people into little cogs and wheels in a system, starting them in school at such a young age and such a confined, kind of regimented type of thing. I think it's just absolutely cruel. And I know a lot of times they try not to make it like that, but it's like, that's why kids, they need Ritalin and stuff, and they can't pay attention, then the deficit's disordered and all that. It's like, My kids learn to read real fast, and it doesn't take all day. Okay, even though they don't all at the same pace. Some have been quite difficult to teach to read, but through patience, just a little bit every day, they all learned, and none of them learned particularly late either. Even the ones that took the hardest. This is patience and direct attention. Any child can be taught. Unless they actually have a real problem that would prevent them from cognitively being able to learn to read. But just personality-wise and also physical, some kids can only sit. But I mean, if you could sit with a kid for 15 minutes, I was going to say 30, because you need about 30, but maybe 2 15-minute sessions a day. Just reading through a thing, just getting them to repeat things, almost like game-like. I used to do flashcards and all that stuff. It's so easy to get them started with patience. Anyways, so the labor of the righteous tendeth to life, the fruit of the wicked to sin. That's another thing. If you're poor, like I said, I'm not poor, like in the sense of like, I'm not that poor. I mean, for many years, I had no backup plan. There was no like, I always think it's funny. It was like, most American, I forgot who, I think it was RFK, who I'm definitely disillusioned with, but whatever. But, he was saying like, most Americans can't lay their hands on $1,000. for an emergency. That was definitely most of my life. If there was an emergency, there was no way I could come up with $1,000. No. But you know what? There were emergencies that the $1,000 just kind of came up. So, I didn't have it. I didn't have it in a savings account somewhere, and it would just magically appear when I needed it. Not by magic, but it would be unexpectedly, or just somehow things would work out. Let's say when you trust and follow the Lord, things will work out, even if you are poor. You work hard. I work hard at my dead-end job, and I was thinking about that for BS pay. That guy. Right? I get it, but when you labor as unto the Lord, the Lord sees your labor, and when we work in righteousness, especially towards the righteous goal. Because who is righteous but Christ the righteous, right? And what work is there to do to tends to life except the labor that Christ has given us to do? The labor of Christ tends to life. I definitely think I would plug Jesus right in there, because he is he's the one he's our forerunner. We are watching him. He is the one whose work we have taken up. He is the one whose fires we take it on ourselves to kindle. Right? And he even I like that he sort of suggests that, what will I do if I find they already, he's not saying, I command you to kindle them. He said, I wonder what I'll do if I find people already kindling the fires I wanted to start. He's making suggestions. Oh, go start fires. What are you talking about? You know what I mean? And of course, in that metaphorical sense, I mean it metaphorically, of course. Do I have to say that in this study? Start fires? It's been on my website for years. People associated with me also take on the same motive of that, because it's not my word like a fire, and like a hammer. He is the way of life. Like I said, the labor of the righteous tendeth to life, and then the fruit of the wicked to sin. So many New Testament places, that this fits in. And you shall know them by their fruits is one of the most famous things Jesus ever said, right? By the fruits you will know them. Not everyone that says to me, Lord, Lord, shall enter into the kingdom of heaven, but he that doeth the will of my Father which is in heaven. How are you going to do that? See, what's interesting about this Israeli situation is fascinating to me, because how quickly I changed my mind. Because I really have not paid attention for years. Some number of years ago, as everyone knows, I was a follower of Arnold Murray, and they were very anti-Jew. And it was, he never really said anything about, he would talk about Israel, but he was always like, watch, the fig tree, the good and the bad, and all these insinuations. But I think he considered them bad. And so when I turned away from that, I thought, hey, boast not against the branches. On some level, they're beloved for the Father's sake, as Paul said, so you should, they are not to be mistreated or anything like that. And so I have this bias to favor the Jews in any situation. I do. Because I look at them as he's not through with them. I mean, we are his people, the Christians, the Jew and Gentile together in one body. That is not, and they should come into that, because that is the fullness. It's not to diminish being a Jew. You understand that I have joined with them. They just forgot to come along. Anyways, they're invited to continue to come along, and God continues to call them. And I have a lot of love for the Jewish people, and that's why I've realized I'm against Zionism, because that's a secular, ungodly system of belief. The ultra Orthodox are against it. And for many years, I was watching another rabbi talk about how in the middle of this century, mainstream Orthodoxy got hijacked by the ideology. Anyways, but at the time, I was very inclined to be sympathetic to Israel. And someone gave me, I met a Palestinian Zionist. who gave me the story of Israel from 1914 according to the Israelis. And I always accepted that as true. The Arabs got out of the way so that they could be pushed into the sea and all that. And of course, it's a very simplistic view. Saying, the thing was, part of the thing is some of the Palestinians did flee. But many of them never did, of course. That's why they're still there. Because the ones who fled were not allowed to return. But whatever. Aside from all that, why was I mentioning that? Okay, I know why. Believe me, I'm not questing for it. It's because I was reading someone's comment about they had encountered other Christians. They weren't other than us. And they were talking about how they support Israel, and they were Zionist because they wanted the Jews to go there, and they wanted the Jews to knock over the Dome of the Rock and build a temple so that they would, and then I guess they think they're going to get killed, and then we're going to get raptured, and then blah, 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 blah. All right. It gets into all that stuff with the rapture and all this stuff. And when I heard that, I'm like, that's their view. That's their view. And it's like, I guess, what I'm saying is like, you would help unbelieving Jews, and like when I look at footage of guys with their forelocks and their hats and the black thing being beat up by big IDF thugs in the streets of Israel. I look at those things, of those guys standing there and just protesting, and they're getting beat up for their act of conscience and their religious conviction. I'm like, okay, so which Jew am I sympathetic with? Am I sympathetic with the armed thug who's beating up this helpless ultra-Orthodox person who's merely just standing by what he says? Apparently he's not making any sort of threatening gestures or anything. I've seen this footage, plenty of it. And other Jews who don't want things to be done in their name that are evil. And that's why the way I look at it is like, if you want to be in God's will, like, I would not want to have anything to do with building a temple on the Temple Mount. If they were going to rebuild a temple, I would be almost certain, well, that's the temple that Jesus is going to destroy when he comes, because it's going to be the one that Antichrist sits in. Beyond a doubt, if they did that. I don't think they even have to, because there's a temple to God in a sense. The Dome of the Rock is a kind of it's a religious structure built to the same God, but not really, right? To a false God. There's already a temple to a false version of the Christian God and the Jewish God on the Temple Mount that a false God could stand in and claim to be God. You don't need a new. I don't think we do. We need it. Do we need it? I don't know. Some people think we do, and so they would risk involving themselves in genocide and other activities to get that, to be able to do that. And they would also risk the lives of all the Jews in Israel to bulldoze the Dome on the Rock, because you would get them into so much how much hot water are we pushing the Jews into? That's what I want to know. Well, what is the blowback going to be for them in this area as they create a bloodbath? That's what I'm saying. It's like, what is God's will, really? And what does God delight in? Like, oh, he wants this temple built. He doesn't care how many people we have to bulldoze to do it. Are you insane? You really think that's where Jesus would be standing as far as it's like, you look at when he came, like the spirit in which he came, and there is a spirit that brings fire down from the sky. But it's not the one that's that Elijah was the Elijah that was. But now the fire must come out of their lips. Anyways, I just think that you notice when you get a wicked idea in your head, it leads to more sin. And that's a good way to judge it. If you're in the will of God, if it's leading you and others to sinful things, to murder, to disregard, because when they, when they say, "Oh, there's nothing, no civilians, nothing but Hamas," I think they think everybody in that entire nation is Hamas, and that's what they're just, hey, because they already said it. Like, all right, the civilians, they're out, and anyone left here we regard as Hamas, and then they're like, we saw nothing but Hamas. I know what BS sounds like, okay? I know what BS sounds like. Yeah, because when the wicked, the things they bring forth are sinful. They're sinful. And people say, well, the ends justify the means. Do they? The ends justify the means. I'll let God do that. I'm not going to get behind a godless movement that persecutes conscientious religious people who happen to think differently. I'm on the side of conscientious religious Jews that think that what's being done to the people of Palestine is unjust, even if they are wicked sinners. Even if they are wicked sinners. Even if there are many wicked sinners among them that they harbor and protect, murderers even. That's still what they're doing to them. I get it. Look at the brutality. You see it. I get why they're so brutal. Because there's brutality in nothing but. Bloodbath after bloodbath. You watch your whole family get vaporized. You start to care less about other people's families. I mean, I like to think, not me. I'm bigger than that. I wrote the song that says, be bigger than that, right? Well, God does want us to be bigger than that. I ain't saying I'd like it either. I am not saying I'd like it. He is in the way of life that keepeth instruction. What is instruction? Man, I went an hour. What, I get 3 Proverbs in? That's fine. These are big Proverbs. I'm not going to sweat the speed. These are dense. Each one of them is axiomatic. It stands by itself. You could preach a whole sermon off each one. And what if we do, right? What if we do? Let me see here. I'm not going to bring it up, I think. Instruction is mukar. Discipline, chasing, correction. Instruction comes from elsewhere. It's the instruction of the Lord. Despise not the chastening of the Lord. It's the path of life. Right? When you keep instruction, what it means is like you've been corrected, and so you keep it. And like I said, instruction, the rod is often symbolic of instruction and of correction, right? And there's a rod of destruction also, because obviously if you don't, at some point if people don't receive correction, it becomes destruction, because correction is supposed to help you keep from sin, because sin leads to destruction. It just simply does. Like keeping instruction, yeah. And so when you've been corrected, you got to keep it. Remember, I was trying to remember, remember how horrible you felt after that thing you did, or remember how you felt. Remember the pain. Remember how hard it was to recover. Remember this. Remember that. Remember. That's how I keep instruction. I try to remember the reproof. Keep it. Guard it. I gotta remember that one. Like when my dad gave me the belt for stealing. And And as far as I've kept to that, it's kept me on the way of life. But he that refuseth reproof erreth. Yeah. If you refuse to receive the correction that comes, it's a big mistake, man. Big mistake. We have time for one more. He that hideth hatred with lying lips, and he that uttereth a slander is a fool. Interesting. Yeah. Hiding hatred with lying lips and he that doth slander is a fool. Yeah, that can be a tough one, man. I have a issue with that sometimes. No, I mean in the sense of the opposite. I feel the temptation because sometimes people, they cross lines with me, and because I end up having to deal with them, I'll I'll want to hide my hatred for them. I don't say I've done it a couple times. But not very successfully. Not very, because these things, when some, even like, let's say your spouse, this is a good way, husbands, love your wives. Wives, obey your husbands, right? And one of the things your husband shouldn't do is you should not, what is it? He can come to resent his wife. Resentment is a possibility. Like I said, because sometimes men, if you have it hard in life, you don't always feel the man. And if the woman doesn't back you up in some way, she also piles on, makes you feel like not the man. That can be a great source of resentment and bitterness. Be not bitter against someone, because a wife has a great potential to make her husband bitter. And that is a temptation. It can be a temptation. And, and when I say hatred, if I were to talk about my own marriage, it would be an exaggeration. But here's the thing. When you have ill feelings, any kind of negative feelings towards your spouse, for them, it can feel like hatred. Because if they are used to you being affectionate and loving, and suddenly you're cold or quiet suddenly, or not communicating, and if I have any drop in my normal warmth towards my wife, she'll notice. She'll notice immediately. And then on top of that, so and then what? She noticed. Well, I got to talk to her about it, and I should tell the truth about it. What's bothering me, so we can work it out. If there is anything. But sometimes, it's like, and it was like, and this is something that's good, actually. You can use this. I don't know if I would use it in an abusive way, of course, not like that. But but this notion to your spouse that, like, you got to tell me, because if you don't tell me, it feels like you hate me. And it's going to feel like you hate me until we understand each other. And if we understand each other, I know what you actually hate. What is it? In what have I offended you? In what thing how have I sinned against you? Or maybe not, or maybe whatever it is. Right? If you hide your hatred and lie about it, you won't get to that reconciliation. You're a fool. Because one, there's a dishonesty to it, right? Even just like there is dishonesty. Now, sometimes I get confused here a little bit. Okay, and probably because maybe it's my own corruption. Probably is a bit. Because living in this corrupt world, one of the things I learned, I try to stay on the straight and narrow and be absolute in my morality. But I do know on a certain level, I do not owe the enemies of God the truth. I don't owe them an answer. Like when they would question with Jesus, he didn't have to give them an answer. He would give them a problem instead. Like, oh, okay, well, you answer me this, and then I'll answer you that. He didn't give them what they wanted all the time. You don't have to do that either. You don't have to be a lapdog to the wicked. Not at all. But, like I do sort of bristle at bold-facedly lying to them, right? I'm like, okay, I don't want to lie to the wicked, because in some way that also degrades me. You know what I mean? Because I become like them. And so I've got, but on the other hand, I don't necessarily want to signal to them, just like don't cast your pearls before swine. Be wise as a serpent, but harmless as doves. So I don't want to do harm, but sometimes wisdom requires a bit of restraint, or let's say I'd prefer restraint. The next word that came to me was dissimulation, which I do not like. That's not a good word. I mean, to act under a false part, to act falsely. That's because that's the thing. I would say it is to put on no emotion before someone you hate, to betray no animosity is not wrong necessarily, because an enemy doesn't necessarily deserve to know your true feelings, okay? But on the other hand, to pretend to like them, to pretend to be their friend, to pretend to be, that's false and evil. Don't do that. You know what I mean? So you don't owe your enemies anything to know about you, what you feel about them, because you got to use discernment in the Lord. Sometimes the enemies are there, and you cannot give them a weapon against you. You shouldn't. Why? Why help the enemy? Jesus didn't help the, they want, you want to use my words against me? Oh, okay, yeah. Here, answer me this question. The baptism of John, was it of heaven or of men? Go. Oh, well, then I'm not going to tell you either. Exactly. You don't have to give them an answer if the Spirit guides. We should give a reason for the hope that lies in us. We should be friendly towards people, but there are enemies. There are people who are hostile to you. There are people that will try to take advantage of you. I said, being a Christian isn't about being a doormat. You need to be wise. Sometimes you do let people just walk over you. Sometimes you do. Sometimes you turn the other cheek. In fact, that should be your default impulse. First, I'll turn the other cheek. I'll figure out if there's any action I need to take later. Because I do believe in pray first, act second. As far as when it comes to serious actions like that, you should. Okay, so any other slander, to close it out. Slander is when you falsely accuse someone. Obviously, that's a lot more extreme than just being fake. All right, being fake. I said, concealing your actual feelings is not the same as being fake, right? And that's what I'm saying. It's like that is possibly permissible. I say you don't have to cast your pearls before swine or endanger your life for the sake of, I got to tell everyone the truth. Not every truth. Remember, discern. I will tell everyone the truth, that Jesus Christ is the Son of God. And he is also, by the fact of his resurrection, known to be God himself. And through faith in him, anyone who puts their faith in him and trusts in him, in his name, in his resurrection, you will live forever. And that's a fact. I can tell everyone the truth, and that's a high priority truth that I can utter over and over again with no consequence of evil to me. I can always be assured that I'm doing good to men when I preach in the name of Jesus. And so, I don't need to tell people, like, I don't like you personally. They don't need to know that. Well, who cares who I like and dislike? I'm not that important. You know what I mean? There are some things you can best keep to yourself. Okay? And I'm actually contradicting the proverb, but that's wisdom. Wisdom is knowing when to zig and when to zag. Knowing how much you want to bet is like somewhere down here it's going to say like, it's just like rebuke a fool. Oh, don't rebuke a fool. It'll say literally, don't rebuke a fool. How is that different from hiding hatred with lying lips? I mean, sort of. But what I'm saying is if you take this verse to an extreme, you could say like, well, I didn't tell them the truth, so I was lying. Right? I hold myself to that kind of standard. One time I apologized to someone for lying, and they were like, you didn't lie. And then, because they had a very different view of it. It's like, you just didn't want to tell me something you didn't want to tell me. That's not lying. But to me it was, because I was trying to conceal the truth, right? And that's just my own conscience and my own way of seeing things. But I don't owe that to everybody, actually. You don't owe everybody to know everything. Like Jesus, he could in private he expounded all things to his disciples, but in public he spoke to them by parables, and without a parable he spake not unto them. It's a fine, interesting thing, I tell you. In slander, of course, remember the name of Satan in the New Testament is Diabolos. which is traducer, which is a slanderous accuser. It is at the very nature of Satan to basically lie about people. You know? I mean, or it can be in a sense to take, you know, and it's not, and the thing is that a lot, you know, what sucks is a lot of his accusations would otherwise be true, you know, and that's why, I mean, honestly, for Christ's sake, this is why I struggle against sin to some degree, is because, well, you know, he paid for my sin, and Satan is accusing me before God all the time. And Christ is having to, you know, be like, I mean, not that this is played out on a daily basis as a sort, but in the ultimate sense, I mean, Christ is there. Well, I cover his sins with my blood again and again and again. No, I mean, not that he has to redo it, but I mean, that's the fact of what it's doing. It's like, no matter what Satan says, it's like, well, my blood covers his sin. Except I don't like Satan having anything to say about me. Not now. I mean, he could talk about past me, and past me is still me. I mean, what am I going to do about that? I don't know. As far as that goes, I got no plea. I'm a wicked sinner. Satan, you know, and whatever. He could tell the you know what? The truth you could tell me is worse than the lies you could think of. Okay, you know. So I face that. I've already faced it. You know, so whatever. It's like, what if men know? So what if men know? What can men do to me? The judge that stands at the door is the Lord himself. Yeah, so slander, don't accuse people falsely. Because God, that's another thing, because it's one of the things God hates, right? It said so before. God hates that, right along with murder and all that other stuff. I don't know if murder was in that particular list, but whatever. It's same thing. It's like slandering someone is like murdering someone with your words. I mean, it is the closest thing to words being actual violence, is when you craft a lie about somebody to get them into trouble. And I tell you what, I've been slandered. I got fired a couple times because of slander. In fact, 2 times. Not every job I lost because of slander, but I did lose 2. It was the slander of women, twice. I saw a guy recently who was slandered by women at his job. Not that men don't do it, but it's not usually their tool, to tell you the truth. Women are far more likely, and ladies, you can back me up on this, they're far more likely to try to socially assassinate someone with slander. Not that guys are incapable of such villainy. You know, but men usually have their own character. I mean, you know, a guy is a lot more likely to cosh you over the head and rape you or something. So, I mean, believe me, ladies, men are capable of perfectly awful things. You know, and they won't tell lies about you. They'll just drag you off and murder you. Yeah. So believe me, I'm not giving the guys any particular. It's a more ladylike way to assassinate someone's character. Okay, it's much more civilized. The ladies are. Okay, you know, that's not a. Like I'm saying, it's, and also as a guy, I kind of despise it. It's like, come on, come to me. Let's settle this man to man, not with you whispering and backbiting like a woman. That's my attitude, anyways, because I do think of that as like a womanish thing to do. Because that's been done to me. I've suffered the slander of women. And any guy that ever slandered me, I saw as being womanish in his outlook and aspect. Okay, he's disgusting. That's not. I love ladies. I'm not a misogynist, but I am. Whatever. I'm pro andro, I guess, a little bit. No, I hate men too sometimes. I don't know where I stand. I have a love-hate relationship with mankind, because I know that we're made in the image of God, and I ought to love my fellow man, but sometimes my fellow man is so difficult to love. Is that not true? Is it not true? In all our forms, right? I mean, there's a love-hate. You know, there are men I love and admire, and there are men I just cannot. I got no use for them. Same thing with the ladies. Anyways. So we will continue next week in these Proverbs. Whatever, you know, we'll begin at verse 19. Still a lot to go. I really enjoy these because I think they are very insightful. I wish I didn't feel like I want to move through them. I wish I could just linger, but I do. There are other books we want to study, and a lot of this is very straightforward, is it not? So until next time, thanks for joining me. And remember, the testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy. I love saying that.
My dead men shall live, together with my dead body shall they arise. Awake and sing, in dwelling in us, for thy dew is as the dew of earth, and the earth shall cast out the rough iron. Come, my people, enter into thy chambers and shut the doors about me. I myself is at work for a little moment till the indignation he overpassed. For behold, Yahweh cometh out.